guys? Welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy, I believe he's in his late 50s, and he shares his story about how about 15 years ago, he kicked to the curb his wife, who he found out was cheating with a fellow church member. And you're going to see how this guy in the beginning did the thing that husbands typically do, where they try to fix the marriage for the kids and all that, and obviously that didn't work. And eventually, reality sets in and handles things like a boss in his plan to not only divorce her, but also make it that it's on his terms. And he uses her own arrogance and giant ego that he isn't going anywhere against her, which is great, to have come out in great terms. And fast forward in time, our guy here has learned a lot, doing well and all that, and I'll be going to share. So for you guys out there that are married unhappy, end it. If she's done things like cheating or affairs, all that type of things, regularly disrespects you, it's not worth dragging it out, being miserable because you're afraid of being alone, afraid of getting hit in the divorce, or even hurting the kids. Because I've done countless stories of guys that have stayed in it for the kids and eventually divorced and say, don't stay in it for the kids. We'll work it out. You don't want to hurt your kids, but you can't be miserable. As well as many other important lessons there. Like you can get back on track and all that. It's also important, guys, and I got to reinforce in this story, that his wife had no respect for him. In her mind, he wasn't going anywhere. She could do anything she wanted, and this guy wasn't going in a way. And I've said this before, if a woman doesn't respect you, she's not going to love you. And a lot of times, they'll just test and test and test. There'll be more bullshit, more disrespect. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to check them. And if that means walking away, you got to do it. Because until a woman knows that you're ready to leave, to split, to leave town, the marriage is over no matter what happens. If she pushes you too far, bullshit's going to happen. And some women to a whole new level. At the end of the day, and this is why they always end up hooking up with the Chad and Tyrones, because the Chad and Tyrones, the bad boys, they have strength. They will cut them off and kick them to the curb like that. And it sounds awful to do that, to have that attitude and have a woman you say you love to do that with, but hey, I didn't create women. Talk to God, talk to the universe. That's how they're wired. Don't blame us. It is what it is. So kick back, it's a longer one, and this guy will make mistakes, but in the end, he does have the last laugh, and we can be proud of him. He says, hello SSM. Some background here. The events I described below occurred in 2008 through 2010. This is the story of my own wayward wife, my own journey from suspicion to knowledge to confrontation, to attempts to reconcile, and ultimately to divorce. And then to freedom and happiness. It is a story of betrayal, loss, acceptance, and ultimately of the way to my best life. I provide a deep dive into both the things I did right, but also the things I did wrong, and that hurt my children to this day. Flashback to early 2008. I, at the time, was 42 years old. I've been married to my wife, Elaine, code name, of course, who was 36 at the time, for 12 years. We had 2 daughters, then 10 years old and 7. Before all this began, I had thought we had a really good marriage. Man, if I had $1 for every time a guy said that in his story or email I covered, I'd be going on a yacht outside Miami. There were better times and worse times, some miscommunication because my wife was Brazilian and Portuguese is my second language, but overall I had thought I had beaten the odds. I had never strayed, I found monogamy easy, and I trusted Elaine so completely that up until shortly before D-Day, I literally could not think of her cheating on me. Guys, unfortunate. Again, how many guys have said something along those lines? You have to always pay attention to red flags, gentlemen. And you cannot put past anybody, any woman, to cheat on you when, in her view, her needs aren't being met or she's unhappy or whatever. I'm serious. It's a sad reality. In short, I trusted my wife the way a husband in a first marriage usually does. And that trust arose from my own nature of being faithful, so anticipating the same in others. Back in 2003, Elaine left her Catholic faith and converted to an evangelical sect run by Brazilians. She integrated well with the group, and I was the token gringo who would politely attend their functions, but never became a part of the club. In 2006, I joined the Navy Reserves. I'd been in the Navy years earlier, and I'd gotten out, gone to law school, became a lawyer, and before 9/11, had never considered getting back in. After 9/11, I vowed to return in some capacity, so I signed up as a reservist. I was called up to active duty in early 2007 for Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan. Needless to say, this was a shock to Elaine, who had thought that I being in harm's way and being mobilized was unlikely. In retrospect, I didn't prepare her well for the possibility. In any event, it led to her resentment of me before and during my time in active duty, and I was mobilized in February 2007. So I gotta say this, if she went into this marriage believing that pretty soon your time would be up in the Navy and that'd be the end of it, and all of a sudden you then decide to go back in as a reservist, you were changing the terms of the arrangement, so you could understand her having some issue with this. It doesn't justify what she does, but I gotta say it, and especially if she thought you wouldn't be in harm's way. You know, I mean, I if she was upset about that, I can't blame her. But again, she should have communicated, even though she spoke Portuguese, in a way you understood, you know, and not do what she obviously does. He says, he breaks this into a lot of sections, almost like a story. He says, suspicions and indications of the affair. The first thing that made me suspicious that my wife was having an inappropriate relationship was an instant message I had with her in February 2008. Remember instant messages, guys? Well, I was still in Afghanistan. When I mentioned women had come to our FOB, she wrote, she said, if you were strongly attracted to a woman over there, you would kiss her. If so, I'd forgive you, even though it'd make me sad. But you would do it just for curiosity's sake. I honestly realized that was what she was writing could be a projection, displacing her feelings on me. I didn't write anything in response, but that stayed with me. Yep, exactly. And remember, the whole being married in the military type of thing. Number 2, subdued when I returned. When I got back from OEF in March of 2008, Elaine seemed strangely subdued. It wasn't anything I could point to specifically, but she just seemed a little bit off somehow. She seemed happy to have me back home, but there was an undercurrent of fear, and she seemed distracted. Pay attention to people's actions. You know her. Something's off. If there's smoke, there's fire. 3, interaction with the affair partner at church. I attended a church service at Elaine's church a few days after returning. I sat in the audience and observed the way she interacted with a younger member of her church. Let's call him Smith. It was something maybe no one else could see, but knowing my wife well, I could tell there was a spark between them. Again, you know the woman you've been married to for a long time. I mean, you thought you knew her, but there are certain things about her personality and how she behaves that you could pick up on. I knew then who the person was who could be in the focus of my wife's inappropriate relationship. After the service, she introduced me to him, had me shake his hand. I'd never forgiven her for that. She told me he and 3 others were her friends from Minas Gerais, I don't know how you fucking pronounce that she had met while I was mobilized. She had to go shake the hand of the guy she was fucking. That takes disrespect and being an asshole to a whole new level. I think this is her way of punishing you for re-enlisting in the reserves and eventually going off and all that. That was her way of, revenge. Sick. Number 4, going out. Elaine went out with church members 2 or 3 times a week shortly after I returned, even after I told her I wanted to have more time with her. Her response was essentially, "What's your problem?" No. You got young kids. She shouldn't be going out 2 to 3 times a week with other people. You're a family, okay? I could see her get together with these people maybe once a month, but 2 or 3 times a week, that's crazy. You don't even spend that much time with her. 5, IMing Smith. This was a time before texting was widespread. Most phones were the flip phones that required pressing on a key multiple times to spell a letter out. So texting was still cumbersome. Instant messaging was Elaine's model of communication of choice. I know she IM'd Smith nearly every night after I returned, and sometimes video chat as well. That is completely unacceptable. And you should have made it abundantly clear. When I pointed out it was inappropriate, she said that she IM'd lots of people, and she did, and some of them were her new male friends as well. Doesn't matter. You don't do that. You don't see me IMing lots of people. I have a fucking life. I have a job. I provide for this family. You and the girls are my top priority. Not instant messaging, wasting time, babbling on for attention with other people. That bullshit is going to stop right now, or you and I, sweetheart, are going to have a problem. That's the best way to handle it. 6, the conversation. After Elaine returned from a supposed church event at 2:30 in the morning, a church event going to 2:30 in the morning? What kind of church is this? One night I told her, Elaine, I said I want to ask about any appropriate relationships you had while I was gone, but now that I'm back, I want them over with. Her response was telling. I think she was too tired or too deep in her affair fog, But her response was indignation of how could you think of me like that? Variety, but rather more along the lines of, yes, I understand. It was this conversation that tipped me over the edge to acting on my suspicions. The next morning, Wednesday, April 9th, I turned on the I am recording function on her computer. By the way, when you said here something to the effect of like, but now that I'm back, I want them over with. So, did she think she had a free pass to, just go out with a lot of people, or inappropriate relation? I'm a little puzzled by that part there. D-Day. My D-Day was on Friday, April 11, 2008. 3 days after I turned on the I am recording function on Elaine's computer. She went out again with her church members, leaving me to babysit both the kids. Smack! Why are you allowing this shit? I mean, I know you obviously can't chain her up to a chair in the basement and say, woman, you're not going anywhere, but what the fuck? 15 days had passed since I returned from Afghanistan. You only back 2 weeks and she's doing this? She's punishing you. It was night around 9:30 p.m. I fired up Elaine's computer, no password, we had never had passwords in our devices, and examined the copies of her IMs as she had been doing during our 2.5 days since I turned on the IM recording function. As I prepared to read the IMs, my heart rate was already elevated. My body was telling me that what I already knew, but my mind did not. There were 4 instant messages, and I took them in order, with Smith being the last to read. By the time I got to his IM, my heart was racing. This is the most important part of the read. He said, Elaine said, today I was feeling blah. I slept a lot. I think it's low blood pressure. I'm menstruating, but it's good that I got my period. And he said, were you worried? She said, no, it was last month though. Gee, why do you think she's having this conversation with this guy? Because she's fucking him. She also said that month was more nerve-wracking. Don't think about it, but imagine 9 months from now, a child being born with curly hair and darker skin. Wouldn't that be something? He says, I knew of the affair not when Elaine talked about a child being born of their union, but when she said that she had been worried about getting her period in March, which had been more nerve-wracking. That can only mean one thing. The reference to having his child was just extra confirmation. As I read the instant message, I knew my life had forever changed and my old life had vanished. I felt lightheaded and sick to my stomach. I could feel the blood pounding through my veins and my face was flushed. I don't know what my blood pressure was at the time, but I'm lucky I didn't blow an artery. I was devastated. And remember, you thought before all this went down that you had a great marriage. She would never cheat on you. Wrong. And I guarantee you she felt justified in that. How dare my husband change our agreement? How dare he go sign up for the military again? How dare he go away? I'll show him. I try to pull myself together and think rationally. Every time I tried to think about what to do, I was overwhelmed with what I just read. I calmed myself down after 20 minutes or so, enough to be able to begin to think of what to do. What to do? It's time to start gathering all the evidence, because I guarantee the second you say something, she's going to get rid of the evidence. You're a lawyer, you know this now. Next up, confrontation. The gaslighting. Fortunately, my period of suspicion to knowledge was not drawn out, so Elaine didn't have much of a chance to gaslight me. However, she gave her best shot when I confronted her. Of course she did. Come on here. Elaine came home that night about 10:15 p.m. Oh, more church, huh? More praying. I had my emotions under control. Good. Gotta always keep them under control, as difficult as that may be. My blood pressure was still elevated, but my breathing was normal. I no longer felt lightheaded. She came into the spare bedroom that I used as a home office and sat down. I talked to her normally for a few minutes. Then she said that she had intended to go on Saturday night to a nearby mall with a group of people from church. Up until that point, I hadn't decided whether to confront her at the time. I had thought about collecting more info first, but I rejected the idea for 2 reasons. First reason, I was so shocked that I didn't know I could hide the truth from her that long. Second, I already had a smoking gun. Imagine 9 months from now a child being born with curly hair and darker skin. Wouldn't that be something? I didn't need any further proof. So when she told me of going out yet again with a group of people that would include Smith, I said, Elaine, remember that conversation we had on Tuesday night? I said then that I wouldn't inquire into your inappropriate relationships, but that you had to stop them. You're not stopping them. Well, bro, again, the fact that you were saying that. Now, were you saying that just to try to get her to confess in a way? Or you actually knew she was doing stuff behind your back and you just turned a blind eye because you're away? I mean, because if that was the case, you should never have done that. Elaine, who was sitting in her chair, wheeled it around and brought it up to me. She stared at my face and said, "What are you saying? That you stop your inappropriate relationship? Why don't you just be clear about what you're saying? You had an inappropriate relationship with Smith. Why don't you just say what you mean?" she said. She actually was challenging me to come out and say it. Did she really not know me after nearly 15 years together? Did she really think I was bluffing about my knowledge of her affair, or was she just wanting me to get out in the open? Probably lots of things. But drama, you know? I said to her, "You had an affair with Smith. I know a lot about it. It was physical. You had sex. It began in February and ended sometime before I got home in March." I think it was going on a lot longer than that, my friend. Do not lie to my face and tell me there was no affair. Better for you to just say nothing, but don't stand there and lie to me about it. Elaine looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I swear to God that I did not have an affair with him." And in that moment, lightning bolts. Well, that would be Zeus, but you get the point. She seemed so sincere, I briefly questioned whether I could be wrong, even after reading her thoughts on what the affair baby would have looked like. Because they're all great actresses, or at least have the capability of being great actresses. I thought of a bizarre scenario where she could possibly have become pregnant without having sex with him. Oh, for crying out loud. I actually got dizzy and disoriented for a moment. Then common sense kicked in. I realized she was gaslighting me in the worst possible way. I said to her, "Yes, you did." I continued to describe the affair with the instant message. I told her again not to lie to me. She again denied the affair. Then she began to crack. She admitted first that there had been a physical attraction to Smith, and I exploited the crack by asking how the attraction manifested itself. Over the course of 20 minutes or so, I led her step by step through the things that she did, and she finally admitted to giving him 2 BJs and having sex with him. So it's amazing how it went from "never happened, what are you talking about," to all of a sudden, after him guiding her, the trickle truth, 2 BJs and sex with him. That's quite a church they go to. Something tells me there's a lot more BJs and backdoor action and a lot of sex and God knows what else. She only admitted to having sex with him once, of course. She trickle-truthed me, but I had gotten her to admit the essential facts. Whether she hooked up with him 500 times or one time, regardless, just cheating, end of story. Next up, attempts to reconcile. Oh boy. This is probably your divorce terms with your state. This was the darkest, most unhappy, and most useless time of my divorce journey. After the confrontation, I told her I didn't want a divorce. Big mistake. I know, a slap from SSM. Yeah. Smack. You tell her that, then what do you think she's going to do and behave? And I wanted to overcome the affair. Yeah, how do you think that's going to work out? I know you know this, but I have to say this. I didn't throw her out of the house. From April 11, 2008 to January 9, 2009, I attempted to save the marriage when in reality my wife was only hanging on to the marriage and me as a safety net. I wasn't monkey branching. It wasn't monkey branching. It was cake eating. I don't want to divorce her though. She's like, okay. And she's off hanging out with Smith, but only giving him a couple BJs and sex one more time. We went to couples counseling a few times. Yeah, how'd that work out? It was useless. It mainly consisted of the counselor asking Elaine what her motivations were, and Elaine saying she didn't know. Again, like a fucking 4-year-old. Why'd you do that? Why'd you break this rule? Oh no. Bullshit, you little asshole, you know. Now, a 4-year-old might actually not know the motivations, but a 30-something-year-old woman knows darn well. And it's only a matter of time before she blames this guy for her cheating. In fact, neither in the sessions nor to me personally did Elaine ever explain her motivations or give an honest accounting of her affair. It shouldn't be a big shock. I know that an adulteress would lie, disassemble, and fail to disclose facts. Even in some cases, a wayward spouse will provide full disclosure because he or she really wants to reconcile and have as clean a slate as possible, but that wasn't the case with my wayward wife. If she wanted to fix things, then she would have come clean and done what was needed or necessary and cry that she's sorry and all that. I don't hear anything you mentioned here about her apologizing or saying she's sorry. Well, okay, that's the same fucking thing. You get the point. Groveling, trying to make up for things, nothing. The reconciliation period was one of intense emotional suffering. My heart was heavy. I could literally feel it as if it were heavy, and it was all day, all night. I had mental images, mind movies of Elaine Smith having sex and her giving him oral. The images would come every few minutes, and I became very depressed and unhappy. Could have told you that one. I know this has happened many years ago, and I know you know this now, but still. Once a cheater, always a cheater. And you find out she's cheating, end it with her. But I'm sure you were doing it because you thought you had a great marriage before. Maybe on some level you blamed yourself because you signed up for the reserves, you went away. You didn't want to hurt your daughters, but you're hurting your daughters staying with this lunatic. And the last thing you want is your daughters to be turned into someone like her. The only thing that kept me going during this period was the fact that both my daughters needed me, and I had to provide for them, and I couldn't let them down. I often told myself during this period, when this is over, I'll stop and cry for a year, but for now, I just have to make it through. It was only because of my daughters I kept any semblance of a normal life and didn't fall apart completely. Well, I'm glad you stayed strong for your kids. As a father, as the papa, you have to. And you're showing them what a strong man is. You know? But if you're staying in it for them, believe me, it ain't going to be pretty. They're not going to be happy about a divorce, but you have to do what's best long term for you. You're allowed to take care of you and them. Your daughters are going to know damn well that mom and dad don't love each other. There's problems and turmoil, and that can cause them to get into a lot of problems themselves and end up just like that. You don't want that. During the reconciliation period, I toyed with the idea of a revenge affair. I rejected it, though. It wasn't because I would be stooping to my wife's level. It was simply that I didn't want to be with a woman who would be with a married man. Exactly, because that disgusted you. Good for you. Next, the decision to divorce. I actually made the decision to divorce in stages. During the quote-unquote reconciliation period, the first step towards divorce began on May 11, 2008, with my decision to divorce coming on January 9th, 2009. Man, dude, I remember dates really well. That's something I've always been very weird about. I can always remember when this movie came out and that happened and that, like, to the day. And you really definitely have these. But you know what? Given what you went through, I'd remember it too. Because obviously I remember dates and shit. On May 11th, 2008, I was lying in bed with Elaine. I decided by then that it just wasn't working to have her meet or at least see Smith at church every Sunday with church events. She still goes to that same church and sees that motherfucker? I can't believe you didn't make that an absolute no-go to continue with the marriage. What the hell, man? She knows she can get away with things with you. That's why or past you. That's why she treated you like this. I told Elaine that night that I want her to go in and confess the affair to her pastor. How do you know she isn't fucking the pastor? I mean, we have to ask this question. Elaine said she'd be too shameful. I insisted. She refused. I told her I wanted her to leave the church then, and she refused to do that as well. Well, who has all the power in this relationship? Her. Why? Because she's not doing anything that she doesn't want to do. She said that the church has stopped her depression, and she was worried that if she stopped going, the depression would return. Define stop depression. Giving BJs to Smith and probably other church members? Her refusal to leave the church was a constant wear on me throughout the remainder of 2008, and whenever I brought it up, probably half a dozen times or so, she refused to consider leaving the church or going to see the pastor. Smack, smack. How the hell? Bro, why'd you let this drag out so long? I know you're trying to help your daughters and be strong and all that, and even if, what, you think things are going to get better? There's, but I want to point out, you said she's Brazilian. Last time I checked in my own personal experience, and a lot of you guys that have dated Latina women, Brazilian women, they despise weak men to a whole new level. You could be strong 99.9% of the time with Latina women. The second you even show a little weakness, boom, we're off. And you're showing, in her eyes and mine, a lot of weakness back then. So, of course, you got the disrespect and the gaslighting and bad treatment and cheating on, yeah. And any of you guys out there that have been involved with Latina women can back me up on this. Even the Latino gal, I'm sure there's at least one Latino gal watching this now, will back me up on this. Y'all despise weak men to a whole new level. It's fucking truth. I realize now that simple fact that Elaine didn't want to give up seeing Smith and wanted to continue her relationship with him. Shocker. The second step towards divorce was a follow-up on the first. In September 2008, Elaine started talking about leaving the church because of gossip going on from one of the other church members. Oh, now she wants to leave because of gossip, huh? I asked her if my desire for her to leave the church had any weight on her decision, and she said in a moment of unvarnished honesty that no, it didn't. She's probably going to leave the church anyway. See, she can give a shit about you. She know. Remember you told her, I don't want to get a divorce? She cheated on you, giving BJs, all that, and I don't want to get a divorce. She's like, okay, I can do whatever I want. I know I'm being tough on this guy, but I have to say this so people can learn from his mistakes. Later, when I brought up this conversation, she claimed she wasn't thinking things through when she said that, but to me, that increases her comment's value as insight into her mindset. It doesn't decrease it. Sometimes when you catch liars unaware, you can get the truth out of them. Oh, you can always get the truth out of liars when they're unaware. The final reason I decided to divorce Elaine, and the one that pushed me over the edge in my determination to divorce her, was a relatively simple event. It occurred on January 9, 2009. You and the fucking dates, dude. And she put on a cute skirt that I hadn't seen before. I asked her while we were in the bedroom if it was one of the skirts she wore while she was with Smith. She rolled her eyes and in a sarcastic, world-weary voice said, "No, it isn't." Then she flounced out of the bedroom and went to the guest bedroom. A few minutes later, I went to the guest bedroom where she was sitting at the computer. D8 was playing nearby, so I couldn't talk to Elaine about what had just happened. So I IM'd her instead from my computer nearby and asked her, "Do you think we've done everything you need to do to repair our marriage? Do you think you've done everything you need to do to repair the marriage?" She immediately IM'd back, "Yes." Yeah, really? That was the final indication I had that things were not going to get better. That to her, everything was normal and I was the one who wronged or screwed up. Of course you're the bad guy. The man's always the bad guy. But again, she knows there's no consequences to her actions. I can't stress enough about the consequences part. That flipped the switch for me. It's about fucking time. I texted her back, "Elaine, it's time to think about getting divorced." That was the only time I told her that I was thinking about divorce until April 29th, 2009, the day I told her I was filing for divorce. Again, you spent 3 more fucking months until you filed. I'd be out with the fucking lawyer the next day. That day. Okay, lawyer, get it rolling. Prepping for divorce. I told you this, guys, that this is a journey, guys. I'd initially thought about starting a divorce to see if that would put Elaine out of her affair fog. Another slide from SSM. Yeah, smack. No, you need to mean business. Men, guys, you need to say what you mean and mean what you say. If you don't do that, women will not have respect for you. I began drafting the divorce documents in early February 2009. I wanted Smith's wife to know the affair and find out whether she should divorce Smith and want me to divorce as well. Smith's married, huh? Shocker. Yeah, his wife should know. Obviously, Smith didn't want to disclose that contact info for his wife. She was in Brazil. But after I threatened to go to the pastor, he did disclose it. The pastor of another church then called her and discussed the affair with her while I listened in. It wasn't particularly fruitful, but at least I had the satisfaction of knowing that the OBS had the necessary information to make her decision. I intended to pull the trigger on the divorce in mid-March 2009, but something stopped me. This time it was Elaine's sketchy behavior. Beginning in February 2009, she started being secretive with her phone and always having it near her. This was in the days before passwords, including taking it to the bathroom. The old phone, huh? Even though this was before I knew of Reddit and had the rundown on sketchy behavior, I knew what her behavior meant. I installed spyware on her computer with no trace or remorse for invading her privacy. I was way before that by then, and discovered that Elaine and Smith were back to seeing each other, including IMing sexual matters to each other, and at least one nude photo. Don't tell me you were that surprised, dude. Nobody here is surprised. Of course they're continuing on. Again, she had no consequences. She knew you weren't going anywhere. When women know that men aren't going anywhere, no matter what they do to them, what they say, what they do, you're going to get more of this shit. A woman has to know that she crosses you, you're done, you're out of there. Especially the type of women that fly off the handle and lose it when their guy is acting weak. Whether they were back to sleeping with each other, again, I never found out because they had a falling out over a misdirected text Elaine had sent to her friend Cynthia instead of Smith, which stopped their communication. But I'd seen enough. The moment I read that second set of IMs, I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I knew that I would do it. It's about fucking time. So I devised a plan. The plan was simple in concept, but required endurance and execution. First, I decided I would not confront Elaine again. I wouldn't tell her I knew she was back together with Smith. What would be the point? I knew I was going to divorce her. I had made it clear in the reconciliation period that if she wanted back with him in any way, the marriage was over. Yeah, you made that quite clear, but she knew you were bluffing. At least she thought you were bluffing up until this point. This is when you should be getting all the evidence you possibly can and presenting it to your lawyer and listening to your lawyer, and stop with this fantasy that you can make things work and get rid of the bitch. Second, I would hit her with the divorce papers while telling her it was because of my wounded pride. And the divorce was needed to heal my wounded pride, and after the divorce, we continued to live together as we were still married. I would say that we would try to reconcile after the divorce, and if things worked out, we'd get remarried. So maybe I'm guessing you're probably doing that so you get better terms of your divorce. I hope that would convince her not to contest the divorce, and would allow me to get the terms to write the terms of separation. I had one goal at this point: no permanent alimony. Because of poor economic circumstances at the time, we had a few assets, so permanent alimony was the only real economic issue. Okay, this is 2009 now, after the markets collapsed in the fall of 2008 and continuing on in 2009. Here in the States, obviously, we were entering, as it was called, the Great Recession. But it was a mess for a while, yes. Third, I would divorce as quickly as possible, and then live with her for a year afterwards. The additional year was necessary because in my state, a divorce decree can be vacated for up to a year afterwards based on fraud. And in my situation with Elaine, to convince her to go along with the divorce might be considered fraud. Then after 1 year, I would regretfully pull away and tell her our post-divorce attempt at reconciliation just hadn't worked out. Thank the Lord you're finally acting in a way we can all be proud of. Okay, if you got to make it seem like you're going to get divorced, but try to really reconcile you after the divorce, or however your screwy state's laws work, to get your best terms, so be it. That's going to be one long year reconciliation for a year after you actually technically divorce. So I executed my plan more or less the way I envisioned. On April 29, 2009, I told Elaine I was divorcing her. I have to admit, a part of me enjoyed telling her I was divorcing her. You're damn right. I'd be doing fucking cartwheels. I took her to the bedroom and said, next week I'm filing divorce papers. Elaine begged me to not file for divorce. She says, think of the children. There you go. Think of the children. Using your girls as pawns. I replied, were you thinking of our children when you had Smith's dick in your mouth? Ho ho! Oh, smack. It was enjoyable to see her fantasy world come crumbling down in real time. She must have thought that I was the sucker who, for moral reasons, would never divorce her, and she could have her cake and eat it too. She thought wrong. Well, I can't exactly blame her for thinking that, given your actions, my friend. The divorce went quickly. It started in May 2009, and I was divorced in August 2009. You did that quickly? I think it's because you had that reconciliation period for a year after that made it go through. There's no mandatory waiting period in my state, thank God. Property division was in October 2009. I wrote the marital settlement agreement, which included property division and alimony. Well, you did say you're a lawyer. I included in the MSA a statement that Elaine had committed adultery and I had not. That was important to me should my daughters ever inquire as to why I divorced their mother. Elaine signed off on everything. Really? I had her convinced that the divorce was just me lashing out and that I would get over everything after the divorce. She signed off on everything. I guess that she probably in her mind thought that, okay, I can just sweet talk this guy for a year and then he'll remarry me or something and then I'll be right back to business as usual, hooking up with Smith and all that. Meanwhile, you did what you had to do to get out of the alimony and get the best terms possible. You're playing the long game. That works for me. The post-divorce year. And the year after our divorce, I continued my plan. We continued to live together. I pretended things were fine between us. I stopped caring where she went, what she did, or whom she saw. See? She's right back to her old tricks. She must have thought that she had gotten away with her cake eating. She started sleeping with a teenager named Geisel, who was a member of her church. Elaine was 37 by then, and I pretended I didn't know. After people don't change. She figured you weren't going anywhere, even though technically you were divorced. She was that confident in herself and the fact that in her mind you were a simp. And, well, you can't entirely blame her because you were behaving like that. On my side, I almost blew it by talking up with another woman the last 3 months of the 1 year period. But I was again able to convince Elaine that it was just my wounded pride that had made me sleep with another woman. I was finally able to move out a few days before the 1 year mark from the property division judgment. Never was I so relieved as the day rolled around to mid-October 2010, a year and a day from the property division judgment in my divorce. I had done it. Hallelujah! So in other words, by you doing that whole 1 year reconciliation living together crap, which is crazy, but you did it, you got her to give you the terms you wanted, and then, surprise, never mind, I want to stay divorced, and too late, you got what you wanted. Looking back, it is now 15 years from my divorce. I love my life. Bro, you deserve to have a happy life. I'm a relationship guy, so I married again. Smack! What? Why? I know you're a relationship guy, but that means you gotta get married. I hope your screening process was better this time. I hope you made your wife number 2 understand she pushes you, you're out of there. I'm married to a great woman. I've had financial and professional success that began right after the time I divorced Elaine. I do recognize that the divorce harmed my daughters in ways that are still apparent and probably permanent, mainly in the way that they are wary of their own relationships and their strained relationship with me. And that no doubt is due to your ex-wife's fault and what she told them. She probably painted you as the bad guy. Oh, he left us to go serve in the Navy Reserves. Oh, he didn't care. He put himself in harm's way, not caring about us, amongst many other bullshit. He divorced me. I wanted to fix things, but not your father. I never told them directly why I divorced their mother. Smack! What? Are you fucking kidding me? They're now obviously in their mid to late 20s. Dude, stop the video right now. Get your daughters on the phone. Tell them exactly why the divorce happened. Control the narrative, or she will. He says, smack to me for not controlling the narrative. You're goddamn right. Get on the phone right now and call your daughters. Because I'm their father and they were harmed, I can't say that the divorce was a positive for me. It was instead of a necessary evil, an evil that was necessitated by a series of really bad choices by my wayward wife. I'm not concerned with karma for Elaine. I don't believe in karma, but I do believe there are natural consequences for short-sighted, immoral, and selfish behavior, and those consequences are nearly uniformly bad. To the extent I know of Elaine's life circumstances now, and they seem to be in that category. In other words, her life is shit. Well, good. Her life she deserves to have a life of shit. And by the way, when you ended it with her, she was in her late 30s. She could certainly find guys that want to pork her, but to get a committed relationship with her, the type of guy she wants and needs, good luck there. I didn't hear anything in this story about her working. Sounds like you provided everything. But then again, well, she obviously has to have a job if you weren't going to give her any alimony, you know. Or who knows? Who knows? Maybe the judge was like, no, bitch, you get a fucking job. And don't tell me you didn't want to have some karma for Elaine. She deserves it. I believe in karma. When I think back to that period of my divorce, my first emotions continue to be anger and disgust. But even stronger than those emotions now, years later, is the emotion of relief. I was very lucky to be able to sever my legal obligations to Elaine and not have it wreck my life. You did luck out, but her arrogance and ego and her perception of you actually paid off because she obviously agreed to your terms of the divorce, thinking, whatever, I'll get him to want to take me back. I could have gone a very different direction. As it happened, the divorce economically benefited me because she was a net drain on my income and a stay-at-home mom by choice when we were married. Okay, stay at home. Even with the child support, my income, savings, and wealth took off after the divorce. So even though divorce can ruin a person financially, it can sometimes be an enormous benefit, and that was in the case with me. Well, great. And that ends our story here. Now, by the way, he continues on for probably a good 15 to 20 minutes expressing everything he's learned from his experience with her. All the things that he went wrong, all the things he should have done, all these other lessons for guys out there. But I'm not including because this video is already long enough. However, if you guys would like that, I can then do a follow-up video about this with all the things he's learned, the wisdom he's gained. So let me know in the comments section. If you guys want to hear that, I will. But anyhow, so you can see here another situation where a guy finally has the last laugh. He finally gets rid of his wayward wife and all that. But my God, man, I mean, we all make mistakes. All of us, including me, and a lot of guys are right in these stories. But man, oh man, what you endured for that period of time until you finally said enough is enough. And I get you, for the sake of your daughters and all that, you want to see if it can make it work. But this shows, guys, once a cheater, always a cheater. And when they lose respect for you, that is it. You saw every step of the way that you could tell by him sharing his story here that she thought he wasn't going anywhere. And she kept on hooking up with Smith and putting his you-know-what in her mouth. And I have a hard time believing that was the first time she's ever cheated on you. I have a hard time believing it wasn't just Smith. So now, sir, if you haven't done so already, like I told you, call your daughters, bring them over to your house for some food, some drinks, and tell them the truth about everything that happened. They need to know. I can't believe you let your ex paint the narrative, control the narrative all these years. That's crazy. Yes, I'm sure the divorce wasn't pretty, and being separated, I mean, once you got divorced and all, and it was tough for the girls, you know, because at that point they were probably they were tweens, early teenagers. But you had to do what you had to do, and I'm glad your life is so much better. So it goes to show you guys, your marriage goes to hell in a handbasket, not of your own doing. Get out. Don't drag it out. It's a mistake. Don't make yourself be miserable. Life is too short. But I'm glad you're doing well now. My throat's getting a little off here. I'm glad you're doing well now, and I'm glad your life is going great. It doesn't sound like you had more kids, and I hope your marriage is going well. I'm guessing you probably took everything you learned, the mistakes you made the first time around, and made sure it didn't happen the second time around. So good for you there. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.